In the affluent city of Palo Alto, California, where tech millionaires were as common as coffee shops, 58-year-old James Jim Walker's wedding to 24-year-old Victoria Chen made headlines in the local papers. It was March 15, 2023, and the spring weather couldn't have been more perfect for their lavish ceremony at the Stanford Memorial Church. Jim was a successful tech entrepreneur who had sold his cybersecurity company for $300 million just 2 years earlier. He lived alone in a stunning $15 million mansion in the hills, drove the latest Tesla, and seemed to have everything except love. That was until he met Victoria at a charity gala 9 months ago. Victoria, with her Stanford computer science degree and work at a promising AI startup, seemed different from the usual gold diggers who had tried to catch Jim's attention. She was brilliant, beautiful, and appeared genuinely interested in his work. Their shared passion for technology made their 34-year age gap seem insignificant. What none of the wedding guests knew was that Victoria had already been married before, a fact carefully hidden from her new husband and everyone else in their social circle. The wedding was the talk of Silicon Valley. 500 guests, including tech CEOs, venture capitalists, and even a few minor celebrities, gathered to witness their union. The bride wore a custom-made Vera Wang gown, and the reception featured performances by Victoria's favorite band, Maroon 5, hired as a surprise by Jim. During the reception, Jim's best friend and former business partner, David Chang, gave a speech that would later seem prophetic. "I've known Jim for 30 years, and I've never seen him happier. Though I must admit, when he first told me about Victoria, I was skeptical. But seeing them together, well, sometimes the heart knows what the mind can't understand." Victoria's maid of honor was her supposed childhood friend, Lisa Zhang. In reality, they had met just 6 months ago through a private online forum. Lisa's speech was touching, but deliberately vague. Victoria has always been ambitious and determined. She knows exactly what she wants and goes after it with everything she has. What appeared to be a perfect wedding had several subtle red flags that guests would only recall later, like how Victoria seemed more interested in photographing the expensive gifts than talking to guests, or how she kept stepping away to make phone calls, always speaking in hushed tones in Mandarin. The couple moved into Jim's mansion immediately after the wedding. The house, with its state-of-the-art security system, 8 bedrooms, and spectacular views of the Bay Area, was like a modern fortress. Jim had spent years making it the perfect smart home, with everything controlled by voice commands and custom apps. The first few days of their marriage seemed picture-perfect on social media. Victoria posted countless photos of their luxurious life together: breakfast by the infinity pool, couples massages in their private spa room, and romantic dinners prepared by their personal chef. But behind the scenes, Victoria was busy. While Jim was at his office managing his investments on day 2 of their marriage, she spent hours exploring every inch of the house, noting down security codes and studying Jim's daily routines. She paid particular attention to his home office, where he kept his most valuable possessions and documentation. On day 3, Victoria convinced Jim to add her name to his house alarm system and garage door codes. "It's my home now too, darling," she had said with a smile that melted his heart. Jim didn't think twice about it. Day 4 was when Victoria suggested they should have a romantic dinner at home, just the two of them. She gave the house staff the evening off, another detail that would later raise eyebrows among investigators. March 20th, 2023, started like any other day. Jim had his morning coffee by the pool, checked his emails, and headed to a board meeting. Victoria kissed him goodbye, saying she had a spa appointment scheduled. Instead of going to the spa, Victoria spent the morning making final preparations. She accessed Jim's home office computer using passwords she had carefully observed him typing over the past few days. What she found exceeded her expectations: cryptocurrency wallet information, banking passwords, and documents about offshore accounts that even Jim's financial advisors didn't know about. When Jim returned home that evening, Victoria had prepared his favorite meal: Wagyu steak with truffle mashed potatoes. She had opened a bottle of rare wine from his collection, one he had been saving for a special occasion. What Jim didn't know was that his wine glass contained more than just alcohol. Victoria had crushed 2 sleeping pills into it, enough to make him drowsy but not unconscious. She needed him awake for what was coming next. As Jim began feeling the effects of the drugged wine, Victoria revealed her true self. She wasn't Victoria Chen from Stanford. Her real name was Ming Li, and she was part of an international cybercrime organization that specialized in targeting wealthy tech executives. For the next 6 hours, Victoria Ming forced Jim to transfer millions in cryptocurrency to untraceable wallets. She had timed everything perfectly. The transfers would not raise any red flags until the banks opened the next morning. But here's where the story takes its first major twist. Jim wasn't the innocent victim everyone assumed him to be. As Victoria held him at gunpoint, forcing him to make the transfers, Jim started laughing. Actually laughing. Confused and annoyed, Victoria demanded to know what was so funny. "I knew who you were the moment you walked into that charity gala," Jim revealed. "Did you really think a cybersecurity expert wouldn't do his homework? I've known about your organization for years. In fact, I've been gathering evidence on your entire operation." Victoria's face went pale as Jim continued. "Every transfer I just made is being tracked by the FBI's cybercrime unit. They're probably surrounding the house right now." But Jim's revelation wasn't the final twist in this story. As red and blue lights began flashing outside the mansion's windows, Victoria smiled. A real smile this time, not the practiced one she had worn for the past 9 months. "Oh, Jim," she said, lowering her gun. "Did you really think I didn't know that you knew? The FBI has been trying to catch my organization for years, but they could never get close enough, until now." Victoria pulled out a badge. A real FBI badge. She was indeed Ming Li, but she was also a deep-cover FBI agent who had infiltrated the cybercrime organization 3 years ago. The charity gala, the courtship, the wedding, it had all been orchestrated to get close to Jim, because Jim Walker, the successful tech entrepreneur, had been using his cybersecurity expertise to help criminal organizations hide their digital tracks. His company's sale 2 years ago wasn't just a business transaction. It was a massive money laundering operation. Within minutes, the mansion was swarming with FBI agents. Jim was arrested and charged with multiple counts of money laundering, conspiracy, and aiding criminal organizations. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Victoria's recordings and documentation from the past 9 months would ensure he spent the rest of his life in prison. The cybercrime organization was also taken down in coordinated raids across 3 continents. Victoria's work had led to the arrest of over 200 individuals involved in various digital criminal enterprises. The story made international headlines. Silicon Valley wedding leads to massive cybercrime bust. An undercover FBI agent marries tech criminal in elaborate sting operation. Victoria, or rather Agent Ming Li, received numerous commendations for her work. She had spent 3 years building her cover identity, including creating a false Stanford degree and working at a fake AI startup which was staffed entirely by undercover agents. The supposed maid of honor, Lisa Zhang, was revealed to be another FBI agent who had helped maintain Victoria's cover. Even the wedding photographer and half the catering staff had been FBI agents, documenting everything and ensuring Victoria's safety. As more details emerged, the true scope of Jim's criminal enterprise became clear. His cybersecurity company had been legitimate on the surface, but it had a secret client list that included drug cartels, human trafficking rings, and terrorist organizations. He had helped these groups hide their digital footprints and launder their money through cryptocurrency. The FBI had been investigating Jim for years, but could never get enough evidence to make charges stick. He was too careful, too sophisticated in his methods. They needed someone on the inside, someone who could get close enough to access his private files and record his conversations. Enter Agent Ming Li, who had already successfully infiltrated several cybercrime organizations. Her background in computer science, real, not fake, like her Stanford degree, made her the perfect candidate to go undercover in Silicon Valley's tech world. The operation had been planned down to the smallest detail. The charity gala where they met had been chosen specifically because it was one of the few events Jim attended regularly. Victoria's appearance and personality had been carefully crafted to appeal to him. She was the perfect combination of brilliant, beautiful and seemingly genuine. Even her supposed interest in his work was calculated. She asked just the right questions, showed just enough knowledge to be impressive, but not suspicious, and carefully built up trust over their 9-month courtship. The wedding itself had been a strategic masterpiece. The FBI had needed a way to get their agents regular access to Jim's house. And what better way than, as part of the wedding planning and setup, the lavish ceremony also gave them the perfect cover to plant surveillance equipment throughout the mansion. Jim's trial became one of the most high-profile cases in Silicon Valley history. The evidence was damning. Recordings of conversations with criminal clients, detailed financial records showing billions in laundered money, and encrypted communications with various criminal organizations. His defense team tried to argue entrapment, but the FBI had been careful. Victoria had never encouraged or suggested any criminal activity. She had simply been there to observe and document what Jim was already doing. The trial lasted 6 months, with Agent Lee as the star witness. She testified for 7 days, methodically laying out how Jim had used his technical expertise to help criminals avoid detection. Her testimony, combined with the mountain of evidence she had gathered, left no doubt about Jim's guilt. The case led to significant changes in how tech companies were monitored for potential criminal activities. New regulations were put in place requiring more thorough background checks for cybersecurity firms and their executives. The FBI's operation also revealed how sophisticated criminal organizations had become in using technology to hide their activities. Jim's methods had been so advanced that they rewrote several chapters in the FBI's cybercrime training manuals. Despite her professional success, the operation took a personal toll on Agent Lee. Living a lie for 3 years, maintaining her cover 24/7, and having to convince everyone, including Jim's friends and family, that she was in love with him had been emotionally exhausting. In an interview months later, she reflected on the experience. The hardest part wasn't maintaining the technical aspects of my cover. It was seeing how many people genuinely cared about Jim, how many lives would be affected when the truth came out. These cases are never as simple as good guys versus bad guys. During the trial, another shocking detail emerged. Jim's first wife, who had supposedly died in a car accident 15 years ago, was alive and living under an assumed identity in South America. The accident had been staged to help her escape with millions in stolen funds. This revelation led to additional charges and the recovery of assets that had been hidden for years. It also explained why Jim had remained single for so long before meeting Victoria. He had been sending money to his first wife all along. The case sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. Companies scrambled to distance themselves from Jim and any projects they had worked on with his cybersecurity firm. Several major tech executives who had attended the wedding found themselves under scrutiny, though most were eventually cleared of any wrongdoing. The incident led to a period of soul-searching in the tech industry. How had someone like Jim operated under their noses for so long? How many other seemingly legitimate businesses were fronts for criminal enterprises? In January 2024, Jim Walker was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. The judge called his crimes a betrayal not just of the law, but of the innovation and progress that Silicon Valley represents. The forfeiture of his assets resulted in the recovery of over $500 million in criminal proceeds. This money was used to establish a fund for cybercrime victims and to support law enforcement efforts against digital criminal enterprises. The sentencing hearing on January 15, 2024, at the United States District Court for the Northern District of California in San Francisco was a media circus. Journalists from around the world packed the courtroom, their laptops and tablets creating a soft electronic hum in the gallery. Jim Walker, once the picture of Silicon Valley success in his designer suits and perfectly groomed appearance, now sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit. His once black hair had turned completely gray during his time in custody, and he had lost at least 30 pounds. The man who had once commanded rooms full of tech executives now seemed small and defeated. The prosecution's sentencing memorandum had recommended the maximum penalty possible, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Martinez spent 2 hours detailing the scope of Walker's crimes. Your Honor, the defendant didn't just commit financial crimes. His actions enabled human trafficking rings to move money undetected. He helped drug cartels launder their profits. His software allowed terrorist organizations to communicate without fear of detection. The ripple effects of his crimes have touched thousands of lives across the globe. The prosecution called several witnesses to testify about the impact of Walker's crimes. Among them was Maria Suarez, a human trafficking survivor whose captors had used Walker's software to hide their operations. Because of his software, Maria testified, her voice trembling, "It took authorities 3 extra years to find and shut down the ring that held me captive. That's 3 more years of hell that I and dozens of other women endured." When it was the defense's turn, Walker's attorney, renowned Silicon Valley lawyer Robert Kessler, attempted to paint his client in a more sympathetic light. "My client lost his way, Your Honor. The tech world is one of extreme pressure and competition. Mr. Walker started by making small compromises, which grew into bigger ones. He acknowledges his mistakes and is prepared to make amends." Walker himself spoke for nearly an hour, his voice occasionally breaking. "I became so focused on the technical challenges, on solving complex problems, that I lost sight of the human cost. Every time I found a way to make dirty money disappear, I told myself it was just an interesting puzzle to solve. I never let myself think about the real people being hurt by my actions." But perhaps the most dramatic moment came when Agent Ming Lee took the stand. She had changed her appearance back to her natural look, no longer needing to maintain her cover as Victoria Chen. Walker visibly flinched when she began speaking. "During my time undercover, I watched Mr. Walker take pride in his criminal enterprise. He wasn't just providing services to criminals, he was actively helping them improve their operations, suggesting new methods to avoid detection. He knew exactly who his clients were and what they did. He simply didn't care." Judge Catherine Henderson's sentencing speech lasted nearly 40 minutes. She methodically outlined each category of crimes, their impacts, and the corresponding penalties. "Mr. Walker, you used your brilliant mind not to advance society, but to enable its worst elements. You took the promise of technology, its ability to make the world better, and twisted it to serve criminals and terrorists. Your actions represent the darkest possible corruption of Silicon Valley's innovative spirit." The final sentence was comprehensive. 35 years in federal prison, forfeiture of all assets connected to criminal activity, $100 million in fines, lifetime ban from working in technology or financial services, required to pay restitution to identified victims, 10 years of supervised release after prison. The judge also ordered Walker to participate in a program where he would speak to tech students about the consequences of putting technical achievements ahead of ethical considerations. The seized assets included the $15 million Palo Alto mansion, 6 luxury vehicles, 3 vacation homes, artwork worth over $20 million, cryptocurrency valued at more than $400 million, bank accounts containing approximately $85 million. The judge directed that the forfeited assets be used to establish a fund for cybercrime victims, $200 million, create educational programs about technology ethics, $100 million, support law enforcement cybercrime units, $150 million, provide restitution to identified victims, $150 million. As Walker was led away in handcuffs, he locked eyes one final time with Agent Lay. In that moment, witnesses would later say, something passed between them, perhaps recognition of how their lives had become intertwined in this elaborate dance of deception, or maybe just the final acknowledgement that, in the end, justice had prevailed. The media coverage was immediate and overwhelming. Tech titan gets 35 years in landmark cybercrime case, The New York Times. Silicon Valley's biggest fall from grace ends in prison, Tech Chronicle. Justice served, Walker sentenced in cyber conspiracy case, San Francisco Chronicle. The sentencing made history as the longest prison term ever given for cybercrime-related offenses in the United States. Legal experts cited it as a watershed moment in how the justice system handles digital crimes, setting precedents that would influence cases for years to come. The cryptocurrency community was particularly shaken by the case, as Walker's methods had exploited previously unknown vulnerabilities in blockchain technology. His techniques, now documented in court records, led to significant security upgrades across multiple platforms. As Walker began his long journey through the federal prison system, his case became required reading in law schools, business schools, and computer science programs nationwide. His story served as a cautionary tale about the responsibilities that come with technological expertise and the devastating consequences of choosing profit over ethics. The sentencing marked not just the end of Jim Walker's story, but the beginning of a new era in cybercrime enforcement. It sent a clear message to the tech community. Innovative brilliance would no longer be an excuse for ethical failures. And the digital world was no longer a wild west where criminals could hide behind sophisticated code. Today, Agent Ming Lee heads the FBI's new Cybercrime Prevention Unit, using her experience from the Walker case to train the next generation of undercover agents. The methods she developed during her 3-year operation have become standard procedure for long-term cybercrime investigations. Jim Walker spends his days in a maximum security federal prison, teaching coding classes to other inmates as part of his rehabilitation program. His story is now used as a case study in law enforcement training programs worldwide. The mansion where it all ended has been converted into a technology education center for underprivileged youth, a fitting transformation for a place that once housed so many digital crimes. And in a final ironic twist, the same church where Jim and Victoria exchanged their vows now hosts an annual cybersecurity conference, reminding attendees that in the digital age, nothing is quite what it seems. The story of the Silicon Valley wedding nightmare serves as a reminder that in an era where technology touches every aspect of our lives, the biggest threats often hide behind the most respectable facades. It's a tale of deception, justice, and the blurring lines between right and wrong in our increasingly digital world. As Agent Lee often tells her trainees, in the digital age, the most dangerous criminals aren't the ones hiding in the shadows. They're the ones standing in the spotlight, hiding in plain sight. The case continues to fascinate people, spawning books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood movie deal. But perhaps its most important legacy is how it changed the way we think about technology, trust, and the double-edged sword of digital innovation. In the end, the 5 days that shook Silicon Valley became more than just another true crime story. They became a watershed moment in the fight against cybercrime, proving that sometimes the most effective weapon against digital criminals is good old-fashioned undercover work, even if it comes wrapped in a wedding dress and paired with a Silicon Valley power player. The story serves as a reminder that in our modern world, where digital facades can be crafted to perfection, the truth often lies beneath layers of carefully constructed lies. It's a testament to the dedication of law enforcement officers who spend years of their lives living lies to uncover the truth, and a warning to those who think their digital crimes can remain hidden forever. As for the city of Palo Alto, life goes on. The tech industry continues to innovate and evolve, but with a bit more caution and a lot more scrutiny. And somewhere in the FBI's training facilities, new agents learn about the Silicon Valley wedding nightmare, preparing for the next big case that might require them to say "I do" in the line of duty.